Hey everyone, I'm Will, and in this video we're going to go shoot some aerials over Fiordland in New Zealand. Now, a great portion of my portfolio is made up of aerial images. Now, when I say aerials, I'm not really talking about drones. I don't own a drone, but I'm referring to shooting from aircrafts, whether it's a small aeroplane like a Cessna, which is what we're going to be going into today in this video, or the occasional helicopter. I've got my friend Matt visiting at the moment. We've done a few trips over the years and also have shot aerials quite a few times. And we're going to head out this afternoon into Fiordland with the nice winter light. Now, one of the things I always suggest with aerials, the main tip initially is to have some kind of goal in mind. Have a bit of a game plan with what you want to do. If you just get up in the air and then you're just wondering where to go, what to do, or even if you leave it up to the pilot, you may not necessarily get the best images. So what I like to do is have a plan A, B, and C, basically multiple plans. So if you get in the air and the first idea may not necessarily work for certain reasons, like maybe the light or the atmosphere is not correct, or the weather, then you can go to your plan B, plan C, etc. So for today, I really would love to get up above Charles Sound out on the coast of Fiordland. Basically, over the years, I'm just slowly photographing all the fjords in Fiordland. It's obviously where I take most of my photos. I haven't photographed Charles Sound before. Now, what I use to plan some of these aerial shoots is topographic maps, obviously, and Google Earth is really good. Photographers Ephemeris as well for the sun direction. So looking at Charles Sound, what I can see here is that there is a beautiful structure where the sound comes in, and then we have the two arms branching off, Amelius and Gold Arm. My concept here is getting to the right elevation so I can shoot down, utilize those two arms coming in, which it's basically an inverted Y. And I want to essentially lead the eye from those arms up and then out the sound to the ocean. Now, looking at the sun direction at the moment, it's winter, so the sun is basically as far north as it ever gets. And that is perfect for shooting this particular fjord because that sun direction. I really like shooting either towards the sun or having that close side light coming in. It just makes the image more dramatic, and there's also potential to get light beams breaking over the peaks and blasting the moisture in the sky, the humidity essentially. The main goal today is to head out there and hopefully achieve that shot, and then, like I said, plan B, C, D, etc. So after doing that, I want to potentially go check out Bradshaw Arm. There's also Nancy Sound nearby as well. So we'll see what the light and atmosphere is doing. So that's one of the big tips, is react to what you see. Let nature do the talking and you just do the listening. So keep your eyes open, and if you see something that might be better than what you initially had in mind, then just scrap the first plan and go straight to the second idea, or just go off impulse essentially. Now, it is good to have a bit of integrity though, because you don't want to be just zipping back and forward and changing your mind. Having a great partnership with your pilot is critical. So I'll be going up with my buddy Sean. Sean and I, he's the main pilot I use here, and I've lost count of the amount of hours we've spent in the air together, and we've both witnessed some pretty epic stuff over the years. So teeing up with Sean this afternoon, we're going to head up in the Cessna 172. That's also obviously important to check out the weather. So you don't want cloud blocking your sunlight, because then you're just going to have a flat landscape with no light on it. Obviously, you don't really want it too windy as well. Wind is not the best for flying, particularly over the mountains in a small aircraft. So you can use a few different apps, YR, Windy, you can reference a few different things obviously. Looking at Windy and just utilizing the satellite imagery, I can see that there is a bit of a sou'wester blowing up the coast, and there's some nice scattered cloud. Now that cloud, it's low cloud, and that's great because that's where we can potentially get crepuscular rays breaking through the cloud, and it's also just going to add a little bit of depth to the images and just give us that atmosphere in the scene. So hopefully that remains scattered enough that we can see the fjords and the body of water itself, because I have had times where I've gotten in the air and the cloud was blocking the water, so the eye couldn't follow that fjord out to the ocean. So that is a little bit of a tricky thing, and we just won't know until we get out there really. But I can see from the forecast that I think everything should be okay as far as conditions go, but again, got to be able to react spontaneously once we get up in the air. This video here is also a little bite-sized piece of a larger course that that I'm working on, a masterclass on aerial photography, where I'm going to really go in depth in settings and planning and behind the scene on a few shoots. But I think you'll pick up a few tips in this one anyway, and I just hope you like coming along for the ride and see how amazing it is out there from the air. So we're just going to have a look at some gear now. Judah's going to be the cameraman. Thanks, buddy. What's the go-to setup for you for aerials?
I'd say a 24 to 70, 24 to 70, 70 to 100.
70 to 200.
Ideally 2 bodies, but I'm just going to run the one. The kind of, you break it out every so often, the 100 to 400.
The big guns. Yeah. And you don't really want to be too wide with plain aerials because you can pick the wing up, the strut as well. So like Matt said, a 24 to 70, like your mid-range zoom is definitely probably the main workhorse. I know for me it is. I've got a 28 to 75, the Tamron, and then definitely taking up the 100 to 400, which sometimes, yeah, does get a workout on occasion. Good for the compressed, layered shots. And yeah, fortunate enough to have 2 bodies, so I can just put 1 lens on each body, and then pretty easy to interchange. So you're just going to take the 1 body up?
Yeah, 1 body and spare batteries.
Spare batteries, yeah.
And make sure your cards are ready to be filled up.
Fill the cards up. Always suggest if you have some cheap labour, like a child, they're really good at cleaning the gear. Come on, the light's cranked it, let's go. Look at that. Golden light already blasting down. Here we go, windows open now, and the angle is working well. This was the second loop around. We had to get a bit higher after the first attempt, and you can see the arm now. You can see Charles off in the distance, Amelia's arm off to the lower right, and as we come in a bit closer, we'll get that gold arm on the left. Here we go, and that's basically the shot there. Perfect timing with the light. You can see the light in the distance. So that's helping draw the eye into the background, having that light source there. And I love the light that is hitting the landscape as well, just showing all the contours in the mountains, which just really shows the depth and breaks up all those darker tones. Really, look at that. That's exactly what we hoped for looking at the maps earlier on. Stoked. As far as settings go, always in manual mode, just to have that full control, and basically a fast shutter speed is key to compensate for that movement. Now when I say fast, how fast? Well, it depends on your focal length, but if you're in the 24 to 70 range, as long as you're, say, 400th of a second and faster, you're pretty much going to be fine, especially if you're far away from the main subject matter like we are here. When it comes to the ISO, I always try to leave that low, so it was nice and bright here, 100, and the f-stop was f8. And keep in mind, the f-stop also is somewhat irrelevant. There's not really a depth of field when all your subject matter is far off in the distance. It's basically at that infinity point. So on to the next fjord here. Look at that light. That's foot arm coming off Nancy Sound. The light just doesn't get much better, so absolutely stoked here. I'm using my hand there to block the sunlight, which obviously puts a flare across the image. Sometimes I'll work with Sean and we'll use the wing of the plane to block the sun, but obviously it's not always the case, so just getting the hand out there, so trying to do a few things at once, but it gets easier the more you do it. So just one of those rare occasions here where plan A worked, then plan B. So now I'm using my topo map to just quickly scout around the area. And Sean also has a device which shows where we are, basically the same type of thing on the topo. So just having a quick look what's nearby. Now I decided let's just head back now as the light starts to drop off. And my last plan as the light gets lowest is to get out the telephoto lenses and get these compressed scenes here with layers and light, because by this stage the light has left the land and it's basically just skimming the tops of the peaks and those clouds above them. Okay, so we're back in the studio. It's admittedly been quite a few days, and we've had time to slowly go through our files. Now, Matt's been generous enough to select one of his favourites from the flight, and he's done an edit on it. I know Matt's like me in the sense that we don't like to edit, turn stuff out too quickly. We like to sit on things for a while, but this is specifically for our video here. And Matt's just captured a beautiful image. Now, this one was right at pretty much the last 5 minutes of the flight, when we had the most spectacular light beaming down. Now, this type of light, it really does only occur, right at the end, and it's a borderline between being not enough light and then just being absolutely sublime. And it dropped off pretty quick after this, didn't it? We just got fired off a few. Now, this little section here is literally just outside the door, essentially. Down the bottom you can see the water there. So this is Lake Tiana, the south arm looking west. So this was one of those ones where completely unplanned, wasn't it?
We just took off in that direction and just
chased the light, didn't we? Because we said let's head back. We had those long lenses out and we just got a glimpse of this light, and we said let's just go and have a peek up the south arm and see what's going on. And then it was on fire away. The tricky part with this type of stuff, and I know you'll explain it for us in a minute as well, is the sense that because we're in a plane, we can't slow down to really line up the composition, and because it's a tight telephoto shot. What was your focal length?
So it's 200mm for this one.
200mm. So 200mm in a moving aircraft, the movement is very dramatic in your, not only the shake in the plane, but the left and right movement of your hands. So was there was a challenge there trying to frame this up? Yeah,
definitely. It's like, because you're moving so fast to like get the mountain center frame, and you've only really got.
So what was the composition theory here?
Yeah, I guess like for me, it was just seeing that center peak and just focusing, like locking onto that, and as we were moving, just waiting till it lined up perfectly
towards
with that
the center.
Yeah,
and then utilizing the body of water as a bit of a lead-in that guides us into that light, into the center peak and everything like that. And what's awesome is you've got that framing in the top left, that huge ridge that just rolls down. The eye follows that straight to that center peak, and then we've got the exact same thing. Have a look at that down the bottom. The tree line down there almost mimics what's happening in that mountain. So you've got that sweeping up and then it stops, and then here it's the opposite, sweeping down. You've even got that little flat ridge section. It's just like the symmetry. Yeah, incredible symmetry going on. And just an incredible moment, and obviously the light to top it off. And this is a great example of how the right light and atmosphere can just completely make an image work. You got to react to what the conditions are doing. If you see something spectacular, even if it's completely not in your original plan, who cares? Go and shoot it, because these are the fleeting moments that can make some beautiful photographs. So that was your composition theory there, trying to line that up, and it was a bit challenging. You could see it, but it was
it was just like waiting for that moment and just.
So tell us, how many frames do you think you fired off? People might think, a professional photographer, we can go out and just click, got the shot. But let's tell the viewers how many frames maybe around this.
In that one moment, probably 40 to 50, like flying
in that 1 minute window.
Probably a minute window, and just like locking on that peak, and then it's a matter of just kind of reviewing after. And seeing which one really jumps out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it's the digital age. There's no problem with that.
Even when we did it, we did a second loop after this to try and have another look down that arm, but then even on that second loop, it just was. We were different elevation. It just looked completely different, not the same.
And that's the elevation here could really hinder the body of water. If you go a little bit too high, the clouds are going to block that water. You get a bit too low, the clouds are going to come up and hit those mountains. So sometimes you only really get one pass on something, and you just got to be there ready to go. So with that in mind, what about your settings? Because that's another stressful thing, isn't it?
So I like the ideal settings for this would have been a much lower ISO, but...
So what was your ISO?
So it was 800.
Okay.
And my shutter speed was like 60.
6,500.
6,500.
So fast.
Really fast, and that's because we've just come from shooting a real low light scene, which had... Because now we're shooting pretty much...
Straight at the sun,
whereas before we were just shooting kind of like in the shadows and some clouds.
So a slower shutter speed.
So, with like the stress of like flying in the plane and reacting to all the different conditions, it's often like I'll quickly just adjust.
Play it safe.
Yeah, but I didn't, like it's split second sometimes, and I just didn't adapt there.
But the bottom line is the ISO 800 is still pretty clean in today's modern technology. And so your whole point was, I just want to get the fastest shutter speed so I know I'm not going to have a blurry photo, particularly zooming in and with the movement. If that shutter speed's not fast enough, then your shot's going to be fuzzy. So you've said, I'm just going to get it cranking. So you've lowered the f-stop as low as it could go, which was 5.6.
Yeah.
Put the ISO up to 800, which is respectable. That's, not a deal breaker.
On my camera, it handles it really well.
And then 6,500, more than fast enough, obviously.
Yeah, everything's tack sharp.
So yeah, and that, like you said, you're looking right at the light, and that's the hard thing. It goes against the old style of landscape photography where you'd never look at the sun because the dynamic range on the cameras couldn't handle it, or even in the film days, whereas now we can look straight at the light and get that huge dynamic range and then reveal those details later. Now, there's 2 points I'd like to mention here. You have... I know in the top left corner, the highlight was quite blown out.
Almost clipped, and that was the challenge, is that bit of cloud was just hanging there. And
white.
Yeah, backlit from the sun and just really blew up.
And then did you have a little trick? Because I can see there's detail in there now. So.
Yeah, so what I did was pretty much use a color fill and then mask it out just to that section of the cloud. So I just added a layer mask in Photoshop, and then I've just, instead of just adding color, I've selected multiply, which really actually when you look on the histogram, it pulls back some of the details and then puts a bit of color in there, so it's not just a white.
So essentially you've painted the highlight, which is something that I've done in every so often in the past, and it just gets rid of that nasty blown out portion, which in reality, the sun is a flaming ball of fire. It is, you can't look at it with the human eye, so you're never going to be able to expose that properly. I love this image, and I was pretty excited as we encountered this moment. I know we both were, and we already had a fun, successful flight, and then to finish off like this was just really just like a gift, essentially, wasn't it? Just like, wow, what a beautiful way to finish up, and we're just both so excited and trying to make sure that we did frame it up properly and just did the shot justice.
That's the fun of aerials, I guess. It's like you kind of never know what you're going to get. Like you go out with the plan like we did, but then there's always little bonus moments.
Spontaneous stuff.
That's the fun of it, that kind of guessing game.
If people go out to do some aerials, what's a realistic number of images that you'd hope to keep and add to your portfolio? Now, obviously, let's just say it, you can shoot up to 1,000 in 1 hour. I know for me, a really nice flight like this, obviously I've done it a bit more, so the shoot count's getting lower and lower, but there's still going to be 200 to 300. I've had flights where it's up around the 400 to 500. So even for your very first time, if you shoot 1,000, so be it. You're better off having more, because you're going to get, like what Matt said, a lot of frames around that right area, and then you get home and select the one you like. So what do you think? What are you happy with in an hour's flight?
Yeah.
What's a realistic number, do you think?
Well, I guess looking at this flight, if I walk away with 2 to 3 from it, I'd be really happy.
Yeah.
And I guess in the past, it's you're investing into the flight, and I want to try and make shots work. And whereas now it's the point, I'm just going to go out, and if I get a shot or a couple of shots on the flight, I'll be really happy. Quality over quantity, instead of going, say for example this flight kind of didn't work out and I didn't quite get the shot, I'd be willing to accept that instead of just trying to make it work.
Yeah, just trying to polish something up. Yeah,
just trying to make something look good, and when I'm really not super stoked with it. So I think,
and we've had that happen before. Remember that flight last year with Ben, actually? So we got up in the air, there was a lot of atmosphere, but then the sun just kind of got blocked by the cloud, and the light on the landscape dropped off, and
it just didn't work out.
Just nothing really worked out. And I guess at the end of the day, just trying to put the experience first and foremost, just going, wow, you're actually doing something that people pay to do without a camera. The fact that you're flying over the land is
and enjoy that moment.
Yeah, and I think the most I've ever got out of a 1 hour flight on maybe 2 times is about 5 portfolio shots, and that's similar to this type of day where it was just everything was kind of lining up, and then you got the bonus, surprise light at the end. So for me, I'm always, if I can get 2, I feel like yes. Even 1 is obviously great, but if I can get 2, that's really nice. And then every now and then you might get into the 3, 4, and potentially even 5. You know,
and that's just
you can't ask for more than that. And I often say to like workshop clients if we take them up is, just shoot, just go nuts, but we're aiming here to just get a good 2 to 3 that you're really stoked on. And then you might find a hidden gem in there as well if you're lucky. So awesome. All right, man. Well, pleasure to share the experience, and thanks for sharing some of your image here with us. And of course, guys, just sharing my image here of Charles Sound, the concept of the flight. I'm quite happy with the results and the contrast of the warm light and the cooler water down in the shadows. What I'd like to talk about is a bit of a balancing act involved with trying to equally balance the frame. So what I've done, I've got that center line there, and then you can see just off to the right of center is where the fjord finishes, so where the eye would run through, and then down just off left of center is where I've got the main point of that mountain. So if I put that mountain in the center, then I felt like the eye would lead too far off to the right as you followed the fjord. So I've offset the mountain slightly to the left, so the eye runs along and finishes just slightly off center to the right. So just trying to keep the eye inside that center grid really, and finishing up around that point there when you look at the frame. And of course, if I did center the mountain up, which initially I thought I would, then you can see here how the eye, I feel like, just runs a little bit too far off to the right. When shooting directly towards the sun, the dynamic range is huge and the post-processing is critical in these types of scenes. So if you're interested in learning some of my workflow, check out the link below for a huge discount on my video courses.